Good Friday afternoon, everybody. I'm meteorologist Kyle Dickens here at the 6 News Now desk, giving you the latest updates here on the what looks to be a pretty significant severe weather event that looks to unfold. Unfortunately, I believe it's going to unfold here right over top of our viewing area and essentially the entire region here. Going to be at this seeing this threat here. So we're talking about the potential for tornadoes. We're talking about the potential for some dangerous flash flooding. We're also talking about even some areas that could see what we could consider life-threatening flash flooding. So that's the concern. We're here to break it all down for you. And I want you to know, too, we have this stream up on Facebook. So on Facebook, you can go ahead and put your comments and questions that you might have, and I'll answer those here as we go throughout this. Let's jump right to it. And the latest information here is this tornado watch that's been issued for essentially the entire viewing area with the exception of Bureau and Knox County. And that is basically a time formality. Bureau and Knox County, you are just as much in the threat as the rest of the area. I will say this, though. The tornado threat is a little bit stronger here along the river and maybe just to the west. Nonetheless, every area you see here highlighted, there is a potential for tornadoes, including, once again, Galesburg over towards Princeton as well. So those areas, I'm not ruling you out here. I think that you have just as much potential for some tornadic activity. This goes until 8 p.m. Again, we'll see how things evolve. This is where the area that is threatened, I think, within the next 2 to 4 hours here to see development that could be tornadic. That first wave is going to be pretty significant. Once things start to evolve, I will tell you that there will be additional watches issued further to the east. So if you're listening to us in the eastern part of the viewing area, you are going to be looking at this threat a little bit later into the evening hours. So that is what we'll be watching for. Let's take a look at First Alert Doppler radar right now. And you can see nothing here locally. We do have activity starting to fire up here to the north and west. We'll be watching that, but right now my concerns are for what we could see here kind of develop within probably the next 2 hours or so. I'm going to take a wide view, and I want to show you this. I've got this stopped here. We've got that line developing right now, right over top of Des Moines. I think that this is going to be the focal point here for a significant damaging wind threat. That is my what I would say my biggest concern is that we've got those concerns for some destructive winds potentially once we get into the evening hours. But you see that boundary there. Out ahead of this, along that boundary, there's a threat, growing concern here, a growing concern that is, growing threat for some tornadic activity to develop out ahead of this line. And also as that line moves through. We've, unfortunately, this time of year, we see this a lot where we get these lines of storms. We call it a QLCS, or quasi-linear convective system, to be fancy here. And that just means within that line, there's little indentations, or what's quasi-linear means looks like a line, but it's not. And so they're little individual supercells within a line, and you get these spin-up tornadoes. But it's sometimes you can actually see some pretty significant tornadoes with those as well. So we want to watch for that threat. But along that boundary is the area I'm concerned with for that potential for some tornadic activity. Heavy rainfall is going to be the big threat. I am very concerned that we could see some major flash flooding tonight. I'll get to that in a minute. That's probably the biggest concern I've got here, especially areas that saw flash flooding last night. Now, we take a look at the threat here. A few tornadoes possible, certainly the case. But I wouldn't be surprised if we, and you can see that highlighted area there, bullseyed right over top, really from the Quad Cities to Keokuk over towards Mount Pleasant, Burlington. This area is what's favored most for the tornado threat here. I think the entire area has that potential to see tornadoes, but that first wave that we see, that could be the area that we watch for some enhanced tornado threat here, especially this afternoon. The other threat that is concerning me is the potential for damaging winds. We could see winds up to 70 miles an hour. I wouldn't be surprised we'll kind of have to see how things evolve here this afternoon if we also see that potential for maybe some significant winds, maybe up to 80 miles an hour. We'll have to see how this evolves. That's something that I'm questioning, but we get enough heat and enough humidity like what we're seeing here today. That threat is certainly on the table for some of those more destructive winds, especially with all the rainfall that we're going to see within this storm. I mean, it is going to be an impressive rain producer. You got all that rain gushing out of that storm. It usually draws those winds to the surface, and it becomes much more efficient to get those damaging to, at times, destructive winds. Let's take a look at temperatures right now. It is clear as a bell here where you can see that boundary is. this is the perfect setup for significant severe weather. It is 73 degrees in Galena, all right? It is 86 degrees in Galesburg, 88 Burlington. So a very significant temperature gradient has formed. And so areas, that's kind of why we're highlighting that area from Washington to Mount Pleasant, up to Muscatine, Davenport, Clinton, and points to the south here for an enhanced tornado risk, because as these storms evolve and move over this area, that is a risk. We see that big time convergence here with those temperatures. Certainly going to be a threat for, again, maybe some spinning storms on top of the very heavy rainfall potential that we will be tracking as well. Now, I will go ahead and move on here, and this is something we show every once in a while, and this is going to be a day where we show this. This is going to be the thunderstorm energy. Now, that off-white color that you see there, that's maxed out thunderstorm energy, and you can see right now, at the noon hour at least, it was really favored here in southern Iowa, northern Missouri. But as we go into time here, we get that plume of high-end, what we call CAPE or energy, really positioned over top of us here. And what we typically see with these types of scenarios, what is concerning to me is storms like to develop on the edge. It's, you think that it might be the center of this core of high energy, but it's actually usually kind of on the ridge or on the northern fringe of this cape where it kind of starts to drop off there. So essentially right over top of the I-80 corridor is where I would say the most favored development potential is. The timing on this, look at 3 o'clock, is when we have the heightened threat time frame for that thunderstorm energy to be really expansive. Now, you see it starts to break away here. What's happening is that's a line of storms that's developing, and that's going to be what kills off all the energy, what takes all the energy, but it's going to come in the form of some destructive winds, I think, and maybe some spin-up tornadoes with that as well. Once we get to 7 o'clock, it does start to move it out of the area. I will say, though, that model I showed you has been running a little bit faster than what I think is going to happen. So timing, I still think we're pretty set on. I'm going to broaden it out to say 2 to 10 p.m. just to be safe here, just in case we get some development within the next hour or so. But I really think 3 to 9, if I were to narrow it down even further, would be that threat. Here is something, and we take this with a grain of salt, but I wanted to show you because it is good placement. And I think it's picking it up pretty well here, where that threat is for maybe a strong tornado. Now, we don't have, Storm Prediction Center did not highlight us in the threat for EF2 plus tornadoes. I'm just telling you folks, given the threat, given what I'm seeing, I wouldn't be surprised if we do get supercells to form, that I think the potential is totally on the table to see maybe 1 or 2 strong tornadoes. So, and again, we've got a short window where this is going to be a factor, but nonetheless, it's there, and we're already starting to see storms form, so that is a concern. I'll move this through time, and you can see through 4 o'clock here, 4 to 5 o'clock, that's when the heightened STP or significant tornado parameter is in place. So what that means is, I would say between 2 p.m. and 7, 8 o'clock, there is going to be a threat for tornadoes, maybe 1 or 2 strong tornadoes, okay? Let's look at exact track here, and I want you to remember, take this with a grain of salt at this point, because I do think that there is the potential that we could see some development out ahead of it. And I will say this, the new exact track model here is showing some outward development here. Here's 4 p.m., and you can see from Anamosa down towards Muscatine, we are seeing some enhancement here and some growth of these storms out ahead of that, okay? This is the main line. This is going to be the key feature here that we watch for. Within this line, we're going to have these little segments of circulations, I think. We'll have some embedded tornadoes. And then on top of that, damaging to possibly destructive winds and very, very heavy rainfall. Folks, I'm very concerned about flash flooding. And this is going to be going over an area that has had a tremendous amount of rainfall in just the last 24 hours. Think about some of the areas here in the metro that received upwards of 5 inches of rain. We saw flash flooding last night. What's going to happen to all that rain that falls? There's nowhere for it to go. The ground is fully saturated at this point. And another thing that is concerning me too, if you live in the Rock River or Mississippi River, really any river, the Wapsie, you name it, you got to be concerned about this if you're in a low-lying area that floods, because that water has to go somewhere. We saw all that water yesterday. This is setting up to be a potential emergency situation with the flash flooding. We've seen what's been going on across the country. You don't want to be one of those statistics, folks. I'm just telling you that this is, the potential is certainly on the table. These storms are going to be very efficient rain producers. There is so much moisture available for these storms to really drop a ton of rainfall. This is from now until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. And I want to draw your attention to the Mount Pleasant area. And this could be repeated really anywhere throughout the area. This is a range, but again, it is much more localized than this because we get these storms to move through a smaller area. And it is very conceivable that we could see some areas pick up 4 to 6 inches. In fact, on the high end, I would say 4 to 6 inches is certainly the range that we could see of additional rainfall. And again, it's going to happen within that singular line of storms that moves through. Think about this. If we get additional activity to fire out ahead of it, which is totally possible, we have to add that to the factor that in as well. So dangerous, potentially dangerous situation here with the flooding alone. And here's what happens, what I'm concerned with, folks, is, you know, we talk about this all the time. You know, what you do in severe weather, you got to take shelter, right? Well, you know, you got to take shelter for a tornado warning. What do you do if there's also a flash flood warning? We saw that in multiple cases last night. Unfortunately, that's just one of those situations that we have to manage. So we'll keep you updated and kind of let you know what you have to do. But it is a tricky situation. You know, you run from water, hide from wind is the old saying. And so how do you do both? You know, it's nearly impossible. So you got to kind of think ahead. And if you have a sump pump, make sure that thing is working tonight, because I think we'll definitely be needing it. And another thing too, we saw this last night, and it happens, and we always seem to, I think we kind of chastise people for doing it, but we had a lot of stalled out cars. But I'll tell you what happens is that floodwater rises so dang fast. Some people drive in an area that they know, they're familiar with, and they hit it before they even know it, and your car stalls. We saw down here on River Drive last night several cars that had to be towed away. So you don't want to drive in flooded water, flooded roadways, and unless you are evacuating from an area that's flood prone or actively flooding at that time, try not to get out and about. Don't drive out in this, because on top of the flooding potential, again, damaging winds and maybe some tornadoes will also be possible. Okay, let's see here. I want to take a look at this for threats. I'm sorry. Okay, perfect. Yeah, and folks, I do mention too. I'll get to the comments here after I show this. We'll come back out here in just a second. I wanted to tell you we got an elevated tornado risk. I'm going a little bit higher on the winds. Storm Prediction Center has not gone this far, but I'm going to tell you, folks, when we see this amount of water and this type of setup here with all this energy, it is very conceivable to get areas. It'll be isolated. I don't think it's going to be widespread 80s. But you can get a big downburst from all that rain moving out of the storm, and you could very well see a period of 80-mile-an-hour winds. 60, 70, certainly on the table, but I do think we could see maybe up to 80-mile-an-hour winds. If we get supercells to form out ahead of this, the threat will be on the table for some large to very large hail, maybe the size of hen egg. I wouldn't be surprised if we get these things to fire up. We could even maybe see some softball-sized hail. So. Or excuse me, not softball, tennis ball sized hail. So not quite to baseball, softball, but we did see some tennis ball sized hail yesterday in areas like Clinton up towards Savannah. Also in other areas saw a lot of hail as well there to the north. But again, that threat's certainly on the table. So we'll go to, give me 1 second here. We will go to the double box here, and I'll keep this up and start looking at comments here. And again, if you got any questions or concerns, drop it into the comments here on Facebook, and I will answer them. So, okay, yep, you bet. We're happy to do this and to keep you updated and ahead of the storm here. So, okay, so I'm looking at some other comments. What can we say about Kewaunee? Matthew, Kewaunee is certainly in the threat. So, yeah, definitely that possibility for Kewaunee. I think all hometowns, if you are in the TV6 viewing area, and one thing I like to note too, we saw this last night, some people saying, hey, why are you covering Bureau County and Princeton? Every county that you see on our maps that we show is our legal obligation via the FCC. That is our legal territory, our designated market area. Bureau County is just as important as Knox County, is just as important as Scott County, Rock Island County. We cover that entire area, and those areas, we are their TV station, we are their market. So we don't just cover the Quad Cities, we cover areas, again, from Dubuque to Burlington, say LaSalle, Peru, out towards Iowa City. So that's kind of our range, but everybody in that area, from Dubuque to Burlington and LaSalle, Peru to Iowa City, all has the same threats: tornadoes, destructive winds, potentially, and flash flooding, all on the table for this afternoon into the evening hours. Coal Valley, yep, Coal Valley, Moline, absolutely. All areas, again, everything that we show here on the screen, you're seeing it right here. Everything that you see is the threat. That's going to be the threat for everybody. So Coal Valley, Moline, Princeton, Illinois, Princeton, Iowa, Burlington, Dixon, Sterling Rock Falls, Mount Pleasant. Everybody's going to have that threat for, again, destructive winds, tornadoes, and also potentially life-threatening flash flooding. Okay, what do you do if you don't have a basement? Good question about this. What do you do if you don't have a basement? So here's what you do. If a tornado warning is issued and it is threatening your location, your best bet is to get to the center part of the building that you're in. If you're in a house, get to the center part of the house. The goal is to put as many walls between you and the outside as you possibly can. Thankfully, around here, even in these threats that we have today, the tornadoes that we see, it's very possible we could see structural damage, no doubt about that. But you know, the pictures we see, like out of Joplin, Missouri, that happened back in 2011, the Oklahoma type tornadoes, we're not going to see that today. That's a very different situation. It's never off the table, but that threat is so extremely low. So if you're in the center of your house, away from windows, and you've got walls between you, you're very much in a safe place. You just want to cover your head. You want to put pillows and blankets over top of you. Another thing too is, as you hit the basement with a tornado potential, and even damaging winds too, if you had to go to the basement or take shelter, one word of the wise is to always take or put your shoes on, because if your house were to get hit, obviously there's going to be a ton of debris, nails, and you don't want to be scrambling trying to find a pair of shoes so you can walk around. Something that is certainly very important there too. Okay, well, I'll be able to drive Durant, well, after 5. It's going to be kind of a wait and see. So this time of year, these storms, you know, and I've talked about this over the last several days, because there were a lot of people putting out outlooks saying, you know, big tornado outbreak. This time of year, it's such a variability. We really have to go almost hour by hour. I wish we could give you a better idea and a better time frame, but what can happen this time of year, what we saw yesterday, is you can get one storm to fire up, and that's the spark, and boom, from there you get all, because what happens, those storms rise and they get big, and they start dropping what's called outflow out of the storm, and that is enough to fire off more storms, and it's kind of like a chain reaction at that point. So it's hard to pinpoint exact timing this time of year. Spring, it's a little bit, actually a lot easier in the springtime, because we're less worried about the thermodynamics of the atmosphere, more concerned about the dynamics, where we're talking, you know, wind speeds and jet streams and all that. This is very much fueled by the extreme heat and humidity that we have in place. All right, okay, let's see some other questions. Will there be a PDS issued? I don't think so. That's an exceedingly rare thing. We've had them. I mean, it's never off the table, but I'm not. This is not a particularly dangerous situation. Watch, at least. We might get into the afternoon and evening and be talking about some particularly dangerous situation, flash flood warnings, maybe tornado warnings, but flash flooding is going to be my biggest concern. Okay. Every time Davenport has a tornado threat, it goes around us, but do you think this time it might not? That is, so Keith, your question here, and I understand, it seems like, right, because, hey, when we talk about these tornadoes, even on big days, when we're talking about big threats, I mean, today's a bigger threat, I would say, but on days like today, tornadoes are very isolated events. We had that tornado back in June 3rd that went right through the metro, one of the most, it's up there, I wouldn't say the most significant, but definitely a significant deal for a lot of people. Still, a lot of people didn't see that, and I think forget that happened. Davenport, almost exactly this time last year, July 15th, we saw a line of storms, very interestingly similar setup to what we have today. But we saw, had a line of storms move through. We had an EF1 tornado about 5 blocks north of the station, went through the Duck Creek Plaza area, Duck Creek Golf Course, it was a mess up there. And we had power poles down on Brady Street. We saw power flashes here too at the station as we were tracking it. So Davenport's not immune to tornadoes. We had one last year, and certainly every potential there today to see that. It's impossible for us to, at this point, pin down to exact town of who could see a tornado, who could not. Everybody has the equal chance of seeing a tornado today. A couple more questions here, then we'll jump off and move along here. Okay, Northwest Davenport, yep, once again, everybody in the viewing area has the potential for all the threats you see highlighted there on your screen. Okay. Do we need to prepare for Kewanee? Yep, Kewanee, as we mentioned. See a threat for a tornado emergency. Again, that's going to be, we'll see. It's never not the threat's always there for that. Anytime we have tornadic activity, you could get one that forms and really gets going, and then Weather Service starts upping the warning language, and sometimes we can get there. Okay, 2 more questions here. Brandon, could this be a derecho event? Great question, because everybody thinks derecho, we think back to 2020, right? It was derecho, but we have derechos, at least, I think we're averaging right now about 1 or 2 a year. It's been that way for a long time. Just that 2020 event made the word derecho finally stick in everybody's minds because that was such an extreme event. That's a once in a 50-year, hopefully, maybe a century event that we hopefully never see again for a long time. That was an exceedingly rare deal. What we could see a derecho, I mean, what a derecho is, it's not so much a singular event. What it is it's determined after the event happens. It has to go, I think it's at least 450 miles in length, and that entirety of that length of that storm, it has to be producing at least 60-mile-an-hour winds or higher to be classified as a derecho. So it doesn't mean, and why derechos typically have some higher winds. It's very rare to get a storm to do that. But we are in a position here in our geographic location of the country and just how things happen here in the summertime. Derechos are not uncommon for us. So we did have a couple, I think we had 2 or 3 last year that moved through the area. There was a morning one in May, and then that July one, July 15th to be exact, both designated as derechos. And both times they packed a punch. They had a lot of damaging winds, and both times spun up a bunch of tornadoes. So that's certainly a possibility here as well. So we'll be going live throughout the afternoon and evening. I know Chief Meteorologist Eric Maitland is here as well. Him and I will be tracking it throughout the day. And once I think once we get to about 4 o'clock and beyond, we'll be really focused on kind of keeping an eye on the now. And so once things start to threaten at that point, we'll jump on here, we'll jump on air, and I want to make sure you folks know that when warnings are issued, and we're talking if the severe thunderstorm warning says 70-mile-an-hour winds or greater, we'll be on. If there's a tornado warning, we'll certainly be on. If there's any type of flash flood emergency, we'll be on. We'll be on air on KWQC, our 6.1 channel. We'll also be streaming live right here on Facebook, YouTube, our apps, our website, and I know some people that may have joined us yesterday or last night in particular. We had some commercials play over that. That has been we've worked on that to where that will not be a factor, so you don't have to worry about that. But you could take us with you as you hit the basement and take shelter, and we'll be able to walk you through everything and keep you safe. So that's the latest. Again, time frame wise, kind of recap here what we talked about. We're talking 3 to 10 p.m. or I'll say 2 to 10 p.m. A little bit later to the east, a little bit earlier to the west. Along the Mississippi River and points to the south, or let's say from the Quad City Metro up to, we'll say Sterling Rock Falls, Metro, Quad Cities, down to the southwest towards Mount Pleasant, Louisa County, Muscatine area. That area has an enhanced tornado threat here within the next several hours. That is why we have a tornado watch in place now till 8 p.m. for the majority of the viewing area. The 2 counties that are not included under that, Knox and Bureau County, that will come in time as this thing evolves. Watches will get extended out into central, eastern Illinois in due course. So stay with us here with TV6 throughout the remainder of the afternoon into the evening. We'll keep you ahead of these storms. One last thing I want to mention too, folks, is if you're in an area that is flood prone, you have to take this very seriously today, because what we saw yesterday, what's going to happen is these storms are going to come through and dump buckets of rain. That water is going to rise it could be 5 minutes. You go from nothing to feet of water and where you're stuck. So you don't want that to happen to you. So if you are under a flash flood warning, you need to take it very seriously and move indoors and take shelter immediately. So that is the latest here. Again, we'll keep you updated throughout the afternoon here on KWQC.